Welcome back to Eddie's Launchpads, the Dogsthorpe Infant School podcast for parents, carers, teachers and schools. Dogsthorpe Infant School is part of Hampton Academies Trust. We want every child to dream, believe and shine.
OK, Eddie, start the countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's go.
This podcast is brought to you by Eddie Edster, the Dogsthorpe Infant School Wellbeing Dog.
Here we go with another episode of Eddie's Launchpads. It's the Dogsthorpe Infant School podcast for parents, teachers and schools. Thank you for listening, wherever you're listening, whether that's in the city of Peterborough, and we know with lots of people listening from the schools in Peterborough, whether you're further afield in the Cambridgeshire area, or even out there in Europe. Welcome to today's show. We've got another wonderful author for you today who's going to talk about her books. Her name is Dawn Treacher. Welcome to the show, Dawn.
Good, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Thank you for your time. You're a children's writer. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspires you to write?
Well, I've got a slightly unusual story because I write to give me something meaningful to do. I have been a full-time carer for my husband for the last 30 years, so I'm at home the whole time. And of course, we had a daughter 24 years ago, so I needed something that fitted around all of that. Now, I was always been an illustrator. I love drawing, and so I'd gone on a course to illustrate children's books, picture books primarily, which I really enjoyed. But for the last part of my course, I was told I had to write and illustrate a picture book. Well, I'd never written anything in my life, so that was an interesting challenge. So I managed to find a course locally on how to write books for children. It was a 30-week course. And at the end of that, I started writing my first book and I've never stopped. So I write a novel a year. And I've been doing that for the last 12 years.
Obviously, you know, you're a full-time carer, so that must take up a lot of your time. Where do you go for your inspiration for your stories?
Well, I'm a very visual person, so a lot of it is a visual prompt. So I primarily write what I call middle grade fantasy adventure novels. So they're for children between about 7 and 12. And they're seriously bonkers, some of them, but my ideas come from strange places. So some of them might be a very visual prompt, like, for example, my latest one, Lost in Time. Now, that is about mice that steal time from clocks, not in our world, but in another world. And that came from the picture of the hickory dickory dock, the mouse run up the clock. For me, I looked at it and I thought, well, why would they do that? What on earth could they possibly gain from doing that? And then it occurred to me, oh, they're going to steal it. They're going to steal time. And then that just sends you down a wormhole. And then it sets you off, doesn't it? And then my previous book, Pandemonium of Parrots. Now, that is a story about a mechanical zoo and a steam pirate. But it started as a little phrase that a friend of ours' daughter had said about a power station. Power stations have clouds that come up in the sky, don't they? And she called it the Cloud Factory. So that's where I started. I started with a world inside an orangery with a cloud machine that produced fake clouds. And that's where the entire novel came from. So anything really can set you off.
The illustrations are lovely. Am I right in thinking that you do the illustrations as well?
Well, I did for two of those, Pandemonium of Parrots and Lost in Time. I did the cover art, plus they're illustrated throughout with chapter heading, black and white illustrations. So I do all of those. Both of those publishers were very kind and let me do my own illustrations. So I do sometimes get the chance. It's like I've just written a picture book series, and that publisher has also allowed me to illustrate the picture books. So I enjoy it when I get to do that because I know those worlds. I know those characters. They're in my head. So I am the best person to do it.
Absolutely.
Really.
I can understand that if you're the creator of the words and the creator of the pictures, that makes it even more greater, doesn't it? Rather than just write the character first and then have an illustrator do it. And I know that some people have to do that because they're not as gifted as you, but they're wonderful pictures. You're a very, very gifted artist. You really are.
Thank you. That's really kind.
Now let's talk about your books in greater detail. Obviously, they're for what we would call in our country in England Key Stage 2, middle grade. So obviously they may not necessarily be. Some of the books may not necessarily be for our pupils, but we do have primary schools who listen in. So everybody will be listening. Our parents and grandparents and uncles and aunties who listen in. Could you give us a flavour of the books?
Lost in Time is what I would call is a little bit sci-fi, because if you think about Alice in Wonderland followed a rabbit down a well, didn't she? Well, in my book, Connie follows a white mouse through a wormhole to another world where time is running out. And so the whole book is about time. It's about how, although it's on the face of it, it's a fantasy adventure with a girl that goes through a wormhole to a world where time is being stolen by a time scientist. But in basic terms, it's about how does time control our lives? Why is it important? What happens if we get too dictated to by time? Because in the world that she goes to, but in that particular world, using time badly is a crime. You can't waste time. You can't go to play parks. You can't do anything fun. It's all work. It's all motivated because time is running out. Therefore, time is really precious. And so then there's another division whereby some of the people that lived in that world said, well, I don't want to be controlled by time. I'm going to throw my watches away. I'm going to start again. And they move out to the wilderness and they build a completely new life, not controlled by clocks whatsoever. And they're much, much happier. So I've got three worlds in my book, really. The real world where I start off with Connie, the world where time is running out, and the world where they've decided they don't want to be controlled by time anymore. So I found it a really exciting concept to work on. But at the end of the day, it's a fantasy adventure about friendship and the importance of family. And because the book is all about time, I wanted to look at the concept of time shrinking for some people. So Connie's grandmother has dementia. So it is a very gentle introduction to dementia. I don't use the word, but it's described, so you can probably see. So for her, time is literally shrinking. She is forgetting whole fragments of her life. Mm-hmm. It seemed pertinent to what I was examining to include a character along those lines. Plus, it's a very personal, because my mother-in-law has had dementia for 12 years, so it's a very personal thing. So Pandemonium of Parrots is what I call my steampunk adventure. So it's about a little boy that is brought up, or he doesn't remember his past. So he's brought up in an orangery by an inventor who designs and creates mechanical animals. But outside of the greenery, there is a very dirty industrial world and a shipping port. And everything seems fine to him until one day he spies a little girl through the glass of the orangery, and he's fascinated by this little girl who sits outside and tries to draw all the mechanical parrots that are inside, because there are 6 mechanical parrots. Now, for me, this is a mystery adventure, because one day those parrots disappear. They are stolen. And the poor little girl who lives in the workhouse who was drawing them is accused of their theft. Right. But this is where a very strange person comes into play, a steampunk pirate who was notorious on the oceans for most of his crew demising because he was just such a hard captain to work for. And the only way, and I'm not going to give any spoilers, but the only way that little Otto can save his friend Francis is by saving that steam pirate from the gallows.
Right.
That is what sets off our adventure across the high seas to an island where there is a mechanical zoo.
A mechanical zoo?
Yes. All of the animals on the island are mechanical. And we have everything. We have crocodiles, we have lions, we've also got big baddie, which is the large mechanical octopus, hence on the picture on the front of the book.
Absolutely.
So yes, it is a fantasy adventure. It is a mystery. It's something to solve. There are clues all the way along. But again, it's all about family. Family, where do I belong? Who are my family? Who are my friends? Is this important? So that's basically what my fantasy adventures do. They look at things in a very balmy way, but ultimately they're about friendship and family.
Well, there we are. Mums, dads, uncles, aunties, all you who listen, if you've got someone in the family and has got a birthday coming up, or maybe you're listening later on in the year and you're thinking about Christmas gifts or whatever, here are some books, and we'll, at the end of the show, we'll let you know where you can get hold of these wonderful stories. Now, you mentioned that there were 4.
At the moment, I have just written a picture book series, which I also illustrate, of course. And again, I wanted to do something slightly different. So although it's about witches, it's about a gardening witch, a witch that's very good at gardening, really dreadful at making spells. But her neighbour, Greta, is a very, very naughty witch, and that wants to make sure that everything goes wrong with poor Mabel's gardening. So it's a story about being different. It's a story about embracing being different. It's got a lot to do with gardening and flowers and spells. And again, it's about difficult friendships. So between Mabel and Greta, they're neighbours, they don't really get along, but they have to try to coexist. And there's some animosity between them, but it's how to manage difficult relationships and being different.
Wow. Am I right in thinking that this might be for younger children as well?
Yes, this is for the 3 to 7 age group.
Right.
It's fully illustrated throughout, which I did myself. And it's the first of a series. So Mabel and the Flower Spell comes out on the 4th of September, and then there'll be 2 more after that.
Well, there we are, folks. If you're a teacher or you're a carer working in a nursery, whether that be in Peterborough or further beyond, whether you work in an infant school like Dogsthorpe Infant School, or whether you've just got an early years foundation stage department at your school, maybe you should consider getting those books for your library, because it's always important to get children reading or listening to stories like that. Get them away from their mundane lives and give them a love and a lust for reading. That's the most important thing.
I sent you copies of my middle grade fantasy adventure series, which is the Crinkleset Chronicles. Now, that's an interesting one because I entered a national writing competition through a magazine. And this particular group of people were looking for someone to write their fantasy adventure story. And I had to submit some written work. Anyway, I ended up having an interview in London. They employed me and they paid me to write these books. Now, these books are a reinvention of what Christmas is. So it's all about Christmas that is grown. It's grown on a farm, and every aspect of Christmas is planted. So it's a fantasy adventure, which again looks at the importance of family, but it also shows you a world which is totally different from anything you can imagine. And we've got ogres, we've got pixies, we've got beasts of all kinds, and of course we've got Father Christmas, who of course gets kidnapped, and it will, Christmas is at stake. Absolutely everything is at stake except her. We're looking at a main character who has to try and save Christmas, basically.
Incredible. The things I like about your books, Dawn, and what you've been describing are that they get out of the normal everyday life. And there's nothing wrong with picking up a book that's got everyday life in it. That's very important. But actually to be lost in a fantasy world, whether that's a cloud factory or whether that's, on the high seas, pirates, mechanical zoos, it sounds really, really exciting. So thank you for providing the children around the world with these wonderful books. Now, if people want to get hold of the books that you've been talking about, where's the best place for them to go?
I'm afraid it's that big place with the word Amazon on it, although you can get Pandemonium of Parrots and Lost in Time are also available on all main online bookshops.
Brilliant. Well, there we are, folks. Everybody's got Amazon. Whether you like them or not, they're there. And we if you want to get these books, here's a wonderful way of getting hold of them, and get them delivered straight to your door, and then you can enjoy them like thousands of children around the world enjoy them. There must be something there that's whetted your appetite, listeners, whether you've got a very small little one who likes looking at the picture books, or whether you've got someone who's fascinated by time. Maybe they're a Doctor Who fan, or maybe they're talking to you about their own passage through time, or their family's difficulties, whether that's through illness or whatever. Have a natter to them, and maybe one of Dawn's books can help them. Dawn, what's planning for the future? What have you got anything planned?
Other than my picture books, well, at the moment, you see, I write all genres, so I write adults as well. So at the moment, I'm writing adult books as well. So I'm always busy writing something.
Well, I wish you well in the future with your writing. My very best wishes to your husband that you're caring for. I hope he's well. Stay well yourself, because as someone who looked after his dad for so long, I know how important a carer can be. So we've got to look after ourselves as carers as well. So many blessings to you. Look after yourself, and thank you for joining us today.
You have been listening to the Dogsthorpe Infant School podcast. Join Captain Dave and his co-pilot Eddie Edster, the well-being dog, on another Launchpad soon. Until then, always remember to be kind, be respectful, and most of all, dream, believe, and shine. Dogsthorpe Infant School is part of Hampton Academies Trust.